In Stockholm today, I'm sitting here with Jeremy Leggett. We sit on a WWF conference about the financing sector and oil dependency. You also have been written a new book called The Energy of Nations. Could you give me some conclusion from your writings?
In that book, I look at systemic risk-taking in the energy sector, and I take as a backdrop for this the things we've learnt about the risk-taking that was taken is still being taken in the financial sector before, during and after the financial crisis. And I ask, is the energy sector capable of making the same mistakes as the financial sector? And I believe, based on what I've seen these last 10 years, that it is building up systemic risk in 4 different areas that I describe in the book. And I analyze each of these. It's climate, it's the carbon bubble, the so-called carbon bubble, it's the scope for a shock in the shale boom narrative, and it's oil depletion and the possibility that we could be facing an oil crash rather than what the energy incumbency tells us, which is generally that there's plenty of oil and no risk of anything going wrong. And so I think, we're on the massive balance of probabilities, we're going to face a future that involves shocks in the energy system in short order within this decade and probably the next few years. And I hope I'm wrong with that analysis, but this is what the facts drive me to. I also think, however, that there is, out of all this, a road to renaissance. That's why I call the book Risk Blindness, the Energy of Nations, Risk Blindness and the Road to Renaissance. But that road to renaissance will depend on the right decisions being made by leaders and communities and companies when the shock hits us.
But when you look at Sweden and dependency on oil, you know that Sweden have less dependency on oil today, and bioenergy sector, when we look at this use of energy, is bigger than fossil fuel. What's your view of Sweden?
Well, Sweden is doing much better than most countries. There's no question about that. But, we all live in a global community. There's always scope for leadership. And I think where Sweden can lead, and indeed it's vital that Sweden leads in this next year, which is going to be so important in deciding whether or not governments can summon the collective courage and will to do something about climate change at the Paris Climate Summit, the all-important Paris Climate Summit in December 2015. What Sweden can do to materially affect that outcome is to change the focus of its state pension funds and become much less dependent on oil and gas and fossil fuels in those funds, and much more focused on clean energy, the technologies and strategies that we know offer a road to surviving the dreadful problem of climate change. And I think, it's not just a positive opportunity, it's a negative threat as well. If the governments of Sweden and Norway do nothing about their pension funds, which are sort of very much part of the Mississippi River of capital flowing to fossil fuels, then that will send a negative signal.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you.